everyone. I will be handling today's press conference on behalf of the U.S. Attorney's Office because the U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain is conflicted for the time being from this investigation because a former law partner of his represents one of the defendants. So with that, let's get started. Good morning. Yesterday, a federal grand jury issued a 22-count indictment against 4 defendants, charging them with various federal crimes arising from a widespread corruption conspiracy. It all boils down to this. The indictment charges that 2 businessmen wanted a corrupt advantage. They wanted to pay to play, and the indictment charges that they found willing partners here in Philadelphia. City Councilman Kenyatta Johnson and his wife, Dawn Chavu. They also found a willing partner in Milwaukee, former Public School Board President Michael Bonds. And with those willing partners, the indictment charges that these businessmen, defendants Abdur Rahim Islam and Shahid Dewan, obtained corrupt and unfair advantage, a criminal advantage, repeatedly in their business dealings in 2 cities over multiple years. Defendant Kenyatta Johnson is the Philadelphia City Councilman for the 2nd District. He is charged in this indictment with 2 counts of honest services wire fraud arising from the allegation that he performed official actions in exchange for corrupt payments. His wife, Dawn Chavu, is also charged in this scheme with 2 counts of honest services wire fraud. She operates Chavu Consulting, and she is charged with having entered into a sham consulting agreement in order to receive the corrupt payments for her husband, the city councilman. Defendant Abdur Rahim Islam is the president and CEO of Universal Community Homes and Universal Education Companies headquartered in Kenyatta Johnson's district. He is charged in all 22 counts of this indictment arising from allegations that he made corrupt payments to Johnson, Chavu, and to Michael Bonds, as well as related criminal conduct. Defendant Shahid Dewan is the chief financial officer of Universal Community Homes. He is charged in 16 counts arising from these same allegations. And Michael Bonds, the public official alleged to have received bonds from Islam and Dewan in Milwaukee, was charged in a separate case. Turning first to count 1 of this indictment, it charges that defendants Islam and Dewan with racketeering conspiracy, also known as RICO. More specifically, the indictment charges that defendants Islam and Dewan operated their business, Universal Companies, as a racketeering enterprise with various criminal goals, including the criminal goal of paying bribes to Kenyatta Johnson and Dawn Chavu in exchange for Johnson taking actions to benefit Universal's real estate holdings in the 2nd District. The criminal goal of paying bribes to Michael Bonds in exchange for Bonds taking actions to benefit Universal's charter school operations in Milwaukee. The criminal goal of siphoning off Universal's funds in order to pay those bribes, as well as personal bonuses to Islam and Dewan, and much, much more. In essence, this indictment charges that Universal Companies was hijacked by defendants Abdur Rahim Islam and Shahid Dewan and turned into a criminal enterprise in order to commit these crimes of corruption and greed with the support and necessary participation of Kenyatta Johnson, Dawn Chavu, and Michael Bonds. Now, defendants Johnson and Chavu are not charged with racketeering. They are charged with honest services wire fraud in counts 9 and 10 of the indictment. In these counts, the indictment charges that Islam and Dewan paid Kenyatta Johnson, by way of his wife's consulting business, over $66,000 in exchange for Johnson taking official acts to benefit Universal's real estate holdings in Johnson's district. I will take you through the alleged timeline briefly, which focuses on dealings and actions relating to 2 properties in the 2nd District, the Royal Theater property and properties at 13th and Bainbridge Streets. The indictment alleges that Universal owned the Royal Theater property and had been trying to develop and sell it for years, but that their efforts were unsuccessful. The property became dilapidated, a blight on the neighborhood, and in May 2013, the indictment charges that a community member filed an action to basically take control away from Universal in order to rehabilitate the property and to end the blight. That same month, The indictment charges that Islam, Dewan, and Universal Companies did two things. First, that Islam arranged for a political fundraiser for Kenyatta Johnson's re-election campaign. And second, that Universal Companies entered into a contractual agreement with Dawn Chavou, hiring her business, Chavou Consulting. The indictment alleges that this consulting agreement was a sham, that Chavou did very little work for Universal, and that the arrangement was simply a way for Universal to funnel bribe payments to Johnson. And in fact, within a matter of months, the indictment charges that Islam met with Kenyatta Johnson, and that Johnson is alleged to have agreed to pursue zoning changes for the Royal Theater that would save Universal's bottom line. As outlined in the indictment, payments to Chavou Consulting started the next month, a total of 5 payments totaling more than $66,000. The indictment charges that the final check to Dawn Chavou was deposited in October 2014, the very same month that Kenyatta Johnson introduced a bill for spot zoning legislation that would free up the Royal Theater property for development or profitable sale. The indictment outlines that this bill passed through City Council and was signed into legislation by the Mayor of Philadelphia. And ultimately, once the zoning impediments were removed, Universal sold the Royal Theater for $3.7 million. The indictment also goes through allegations regarding Universal Community Homes' handling of its properties at 13th and Bainbridge Streets. The indictment alleges that Universal purchased these properties years earlier for $3 under a redevelopment authority contract which required Universal to build on the land. Under the contract, Universal was required to complete construction within 18 months or face the prospect of reversion back to the city. The indictment alleges that these parcels under Universal's ownership nonetheless remained undeveloped for 9 years, strewn with trash, again a blight on the neighborhood. And in early 2014, Philadelphia began the process of reversion. This is when things are alleged to have changed. In January 2014, Dawn Chavou is alleged to have contacted defendant Islam and warned him that Philadelphia intended to revert the property. And that same month, it is alleged that Chavou received an $18,000 payment from Universal. It was her third of 5 payments from Universal. Shortly thereafter, the indictment alleges that Johnson stated to a city official that he would not support the reversion of the Bainbridge Street properties, exercising what is known as his councilmanic prerogative to influence property development in his district. And as a result, the reversion process stalled. The indictment alleges that this resulted in Universal being able to continue owning its properties, valued between $2.6 and $3.5 million. So in both instances, the Royal Theater and the 13th and Bainbridge properties, Universal is alleged not only to have silenced attempts to take away and rehabilitate their blighted properties, but also to have profited greatly from those properties, thanks to Kenyatta Johnson's efforts, at the same time Universal was paying Johnson's wife, Dawn Chavou. And the indictment charges that Johnson never disclosed this to the city, nor did he make any effort to recuse himself from the Universal matters, despite the fact that his wife was on Universal's payroll. Now, Islam and Dewan are charged with other crimes in this indictment. They are charged with honest services wire fraud arising out of their scheme to pay then-president of the Milwaukee Public School Board, Michael Bonds, in exchange for Bonds taking official actions which ultimately allowed Universal to expand its charter school operations in Milwaukee and to lease public school property under favorable lease conditions. Bonds has pled guilty to receiving roughly $18,000 in bribes in exchange for his actions. He is scheduled to be sentenced this spring. Islam and Dewan are also charged with wire fraud arising out of their scheme to get rich by siphoning funds from Universal companies through sham business expenses, weekly cash payments, and 5-figure bonuses. And finally, Islam is charged with filing false tax returns for 6 years from 2011 through 2016 based on his underreporting of income, including those fraudulent reimbursements and bonus payments. Elected officials are supposed to represent the citizens honestly and honorably and without corrupt favoritism. They owe everyone they represent a duty of honest services. Elected officials must not join hands with corrupt businessmen in a pay-to-play system. When that happens, it injures all citizens. It destroys people's faith in our system of representation. It robs honest businessmen and women of their opportunities and honest ambitions. And it is a crime. Yet these charges allege that this is exactly what happened here in 2 cities through the use of a criminal enterprise over multiple business deals. This investigation was a long and complicated one, and we would not be standing here today without the hard work of everyone standing up here with me. Thank you to Assistant U.S. Attorneys Eric Gibson and Mark Dubnoff, and the Chief of our Corruption, Tax Fraud, and Civil Rights Unit, Richard Barrett, for all of their hard work. Thank you to FBI and IRS Criminal Investigation for their hard and skilled work throughout this investigation. And thank you to some folks who are not here today from the Department of Justice's Organized Crime and Gang Section. They were also an instrumental part of this team. This was a team effort, and I'm grateful for everyone's hard work. I'm now going to turn the podium over to FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Kristen Zajac, and once we're finished with the introductory remarks, we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody. As Jennifer said, my name is Kristen Zajac, and I am the Assistant Special Agent in Charge of the FBI here in Philadelphia. What we have here is 4 people pretending that their motives were purely civic-minded. In fact, they were unlawfully conspiring to enrich themselves. As alleged in the indictment, Abdul Rahim Islam and Shahid Dawan stole nearly $500,000 from Universal through some not just creative but criminal accounting. They stole money for themselves in the form of supposed bonuses, and they stole money to use as bribes to further their financial pursuits. They doled out that bribe money to a school board president thousands of miles away in Milwaukee, and they doled it out right here to a city councilman representing Philadelphia's 2nd District. Well, in this Commonwealth and in this country, our elected officials work for us, not the other way around. Using public office for personal financial gain is a crime, plain and simple. Kenyatta Johnson deprived the residents of his district of the honest services to which they are entitled. As alleged, he failed to act in the best interest of his constituents by using his elected position to accept and to base his official actions on bribes, with Dawn Chavu providing him cover by helping to conceal his payments. This is a wide-ranging racketeering conspiracy to commit criminal acts and a complex and very lengthy investigation. My thanks to the agents, the analysts, and the attorneys who have worked so hard to advance this case, specifically the FBI's Public Corruption Squad, EDPA's prosecution team, as well as our colleagues at IRS Criminal Investigation. Their continued partnership and support are greatly appreciated. We are a force multiplier for each other. That's how we have these successes. There are 56 field offices of the FBI here in the United States, Philly being the 8th largest. In Philadelphia, we have a higher percentage of agents and task force officers working corruption than any other office in the FBI. The agents and task force officers and professional support here represent our best and brightest. That speaks to our commitment to ridding this city of this scourge, and unfortunately, it highlights the magnitude of the problem in our city. I would ask anyone with knowledge of wrongdoing by public officials to call the FBI or share that information online at tips.fbi.gov. You can remain anonymous if you like. Thank you for your time this morning, and now I'd like to turn it over to IRS Special Agent in Charge, Guy Fico.
Thank you, Christian. Good morning. My name is Guy Fico, and I'm the Special Agent in Charge for IRS Criminal Investigation for the Philadelphia Field Office. IRS Criminal Investigation is proud to have worked side by side with our federal law enforcement partners, the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, and others, in bringing criminal charges against Kenyatta Johnson Don Shavu, Abdur Rahim Islam, and Shahid Dewan. Kenyatta Johnson took an oath to serve the interests of the citizens of Philadelphia, not his own. Today he stands charged with doing just that, looking out for his own financial interest. With the assistance of his wife, Don Shavu, Johnson is alleged to have received bribe payments from Islam and Dewan using funds obtained from Universal. In exchange for the bribes, Johnson performed official acts to benefit Islam, Dewan, and Universal. Elected officials like Kenyatta Johnson hold a position of trust in the eyes of the public. That trust is broken when these officials commit crimes. Elected officials are not immune from federal investigations and prosecution. If you abuse your office by committing a crime, IRS Criminal Investigation, along with our law enforcement partners, will investigate and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Abdur Rahim Islam is a certified public accountant. He is also charged with multiple counts of aiding and abetting the preparation of false tax returns. The tax charges against him stem from his failure to report over $550,000 of taxable income on his 2011 through 2016 tax returns. Islam fraudulently reduced his taxable income by inflating or creating false and fictitious business expenses to offset his income. He padded legitimate business expenses he submitted for reimbursement with a variety of personal expenditures, to include his personal car insurance, political contributions, personal vacations, and gym memberships. These expenses were reimbursed by Universal and were not included as income on Islam's personal tax returns. Paying taxes is a solemn obligation of citizenship. Individuals like Islam who hide income and evade taxes undermine our democracy. It's tax season, and the tax charges against Islam should serve as a stark warning to those contemplating defrauding our tax system. IRS Criminal Investigation is proud to have been a member of this formidable investigative team who have worked tirelessly to investigate and hold these 4 individuals accountable. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jennifer Williams.
All right, we'll open it up to questions.
Talk about how the city, by design, has this councilmanic prerogative and how this lends itself to something such as this indictment happened.
Well, the councilmanic prerogative is not a written rule. It is a custom. It is a custom in Philadelphia that allows individual city council persons to influence nearly all land use decisions in their districts. When a council person evokes the councilmanic prerogative, for example, to support or reject a proposed development in their district, it is almost always honored by the rest of council. So it is an informal custom, but it holds steady in Philadelphia.
And so that leaves council members to wield great power over their districts.
It does. Other questions? That's a big question. Our office, along with our federal law enforcement agency partners, including FBI and IRS, investigate allegations of corruption when they come to us. We follow the evidence where it leads, and we bring cases where appropriate. That is why we're here today, and we will continue to do that.
Would you say that, based on your investigation, that Islam and Dewan were acting on their own within Universal, or were they working with the knowledge and support of other people within the organization?
Well, I can't comment on aspects of the investigation that are not public. I will point out that we have not charged Universal with any crimes. It is the criminal enterprise outlined in this indictment, but Universal itself was not charged. Only Islam and Dewan have been charged with crimes.
I think the question that'll be on people's lips, given the founder of that organization can handle any risk that he was involved in what's alleged here.
I'm afraid I'm unable to comment on anything that's not contained in the indictment.
Jennifer, how about surrender, first appearance?
Yes. All of the defendants are being given the opportunity to self-surrender. Tomorrow, on Thursday, Dewan is going to be self-surrendering and appearing before Magistrate Judge Lorette at 1:30 p.m. on the 5th floor of the courthouse. On Friday at 1:30 p.m. before Judge Lorette, defendants Kenyatta Johnson and Dawn Shavu will be appearing, and likely defendant Islam as well. Yes. This indictment should send a very strong message to lawmakers and businessmen and women in the area that public corruption will not be tolerated, it will be investigated aggressively, and it will be charged. I don't know that I can comment on the future of councilmanic prerogative. It is included in the indictment as one of the means by which Kenyatta Johnson was able to act to benefit Universal, but beyond that I can't comment. Yes?
How do you know how much work was done on this contract? Why do you describe it as a sham?
Well, I can only comment on what is contained within the indictment. The indictment says that Dawn Shavu performed very little work on the contract. I can't comment beyond saying that she did little work on the contract. I can't comment on that at this time because it is not public information. This office and our law enforcement partners follow the evidence where it may lead, and we charge a case when the grand jury finds that a case is ready to be charged. Your question is whether defendants Islam and Dewan personally profited through the use of public funds paid to their charter school. The indictment charges that they did embezzle funds from Universal, and Universal did receive public funds in Milwaukee to support their charter school operations. Beyond that, I cannot comment. Yes. Other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone.